We are live.
We have an amazing lineup of some really, really cool guests. And this season, I want to totally spotlight law enforcement. We're going to kick it off with Wayne Bullier, who is from the Police Academy across the street, Broward College. So he's going to talk about entry-level training, recruit training, what goes into the curriculum. A whole bunch of other guests that are going to come on that are going to talk about family relationships within police families. And we're going to have our very own dean on, Dr. Durham. Remember, this is the brainchild of Dr. Durham to do investigation with Dr. T. It's her idea. She is going to talk about what is it like to be a mother of a first responder. One of the things that I really hope the audiences will come away with is an understanding and an appreciation and an empathic view of police officers.
So tonight, I am so excited because I have my friend Ed Dentzel here from UNFOUND. It's a very famous podcast. He's a very famous podcaster. He's a journalist. He is a filmmaker. He is an extraordinary human being, and he's dedicated his life now. Ed, please come on, because otherwise it looks like you're missing. And I know that we're doing the anatomy tonight of a missing persons case, which I always like to do every season. And if you heard, the theme this particular season, if you will, it's really semester. But what we're doing is dedicating this to law enforcement. So you say, well, then why am I on? Well, you're on because you are a paraprofessional in this whole criminal justice arena. You're a journalist, but you're also a true crime advocate, right? So all the true crime enthusiasts that are out there that love this kind of thing, like love the analysis, love the investigation piece that you do, like all of this that you do, is very criminal justice related, 100%, because a missing person is always going to go to the police. Like, well, the missing person themselves may not, but their family and their friends certainly will. And, like, for example, my dear friend, I think the older we get, Ed, the more likely we are to experience the death of our friends and our
Sure.
family, right? So that's like kind of like, um, it's not a benefit from living long. It just comes with it. It's like a casualty, right? Of living long. People in your life die. So my
Get
really
out of here
dear,
alive, Dr. T.
I know, especially in Florida. But that's because what do they call Florida, like the waiting room, heaven's waiting room or something?
Yeah.
Anyway, but this isn't the case of my friend. My friend was supposed to show up for a class. He's 68 years old. He played bass, and him and I jammed a lot together, but we were really close, good friends. And he had been experiencing some pain, and then he was supposed to go somewhere that morning, and he didn't show up. And then his son was like, "Wait a second, something's wrong," and he called the police, and they did a wellness check, and they found that he had died, and he was home, in the bathroom, probably a heart attack. It looks like. So the point is that the police do get involved in all of these missing persons cases. Now, whether or not the police do the bang up job that they should do is another session that we could talk about. But I know that you yourself find sometimes frustration with police in the
Sure.
investigation of missing persons. But what I love about you, Ed, there's so many things that I love about you, really. But one of the things that I do love is how you give voice to the voiceless, to the forgotten, and you support the family in a way because you give voice to that which others have like passed. Let's pass on. Let's keep going. Let's keep it moving. Next missing persons case. Oh, sorry. open case, sorry, it's so old, forget it. But you don't forget it. And
Nope.
that's the part that I love. So tonight we always ask, like, you and I have talked about this, that we really think there's value to discussing the anatomy of a
Right.
missing persons case.
What does
And
it look
so,
like? Yeah. What
yeah,
does a disappearance case look like?
exactly. So take it away, man. And I
Okay.
miss you, and I'm glad you're here tonight. And let's do it.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Again, we were just talking before we started. It's been a while, I guess, in days or months since we last got together, but we were also saying, man, it seems like yesterday. So it seems like it's been a long time, but then, like, the feeling part of it, the emotional part of it, it seems like it was yesterday that we got together. So it's really weird, but it's good to be here again, and I appreciate all the kind words. I think for anybody maybe it's watching this for the first time, maybe some of your students. I know a lot of my listeners are going to be watching and listening this evening. Um, I guess I would call myself a disappearance scientist. I study disappearances. And I will say that I'm not an expert in any particular disappearance case. There's certainly all these disappearances that have been featured on Unfound, about 360 now. I would say I know them, certainly. But I would not say I'm an expert in any one of them. I see my job not only as being a reporter and being objective that way, but I see myself as somebody who's looking at the overall picture of disappearances, of course, mainly in the United States. I'm an American, I live here. But of course, we've covered disappearances outside the United States. So it's my job to look at the overall picture. What is going on? What do the stats say? What do the trends say? Does the public understand really what's going on out there? Or does the media, true crime podcasters, people with YouTube channels, everybody else, do we have to change in some way to make sure that these cases, no matter if they're 60, 70 years old or just happened last week, are they presented in the correct way? Are they presented in a truthful way, a factual way? And from all of that, I try to get an idea what is going on, where are the problems, how can they be fixed, can they be fixed? Is this a police problem? Is it a family problem? Is it a technological problem? What are the issues? Why do some of these disappearances stay unsolved, unresolved for as long as they do? So for tonight, we do this once a semester, I guess every 6 months when we get together. I go through what is a disappearance? What does it look like? And I guess maybe this is our fourth or fifth time doing this to keep everything professional, I guess you would say. I don't want to get too personal with any particular case or anything. I just use myself as the person who goes missing. And I've come up with a few different scenarios over the years. And the last one we did, I think we even did it right there on Halloween. And it was like, well, what if I went missing when I went trick or treating with family and friends? What would that look like? So, what we're doing this evening, the anatomy of a disappearance, I think is really relevant in a couple different ways, probably a little more than the trick or treat one is for two different reasons. Number one, a lot of people go missing when they're going places, whether it has to do with walking, driving, riding a bike. Maybe they're going for a jog in a park. If they're flying across the United, or supposedly supposed to be flying across the United States, a lot of disappearances happen this way. In addition, part two of this is a lot of disappearances could have something to do with ex-boyfriends, ex-girlfriends, ex-partners. And so we're taking both of those very common types of scenarios and I'm combining them into where I go missing, where I am going to another part of the United States to see an ex-girlfriend of mine. So that is the scenario this evening. So traveling a long distance, we're going to be going to LA, and I'm going to be going out there to see an ex. And yes, I do have an ex-girlfriend that does live in LA, but the name has changed to hide her identity. So that's what we're doing. So we're moving on to, well, what is this? Everybody should know to set this up. I live in Clearwater Beach, Florida. So for this, I certainly could drive, and I've driven across the United States a few times, but we're going to keep it at least a little simpler. The plan is for me to fly out there. So I'm supposed to fly out there, and just to set this up, we're going to use her name as Michelle. That's not her real name, and she lives in LA. We were a couple some years ago, not recently, but we're still friends here in 2025. And to my knowledge, she's single, none of my business. But so the plan is for me to fly from Tampa, where I live, to LA on August 1st of 2025. All right. And the scenario is that allegedly, once again, the key word is being allegedly, I don't get there. I don't show up at where she lives. And so what has happened? Now, what are the complications? So I'm supposed to fly, and we'll get into the minutia of here in a bit. But the very simple scenario is I'm supposed to be there on the evening of August the 1st at her place. I don't show up there. Now, some of the big complication regarding all of this is there's a lot that can happen from me being in my condo here in Clearwater Beach to me getting to her doorstep in LA. We have to think I have to go downstairs. Is my brother driving me? Am I taking Uber, Lyft to the airport? Because I can't walk it. And maybe I could drive it. Maybe I'm going to be staying out there for a little while. We're just going to say, well, somebody's supposed to pick me up. Is supposed to take me over there. Does something happen at the airport in Tampa? Of course, if the plane crashes, everybody would know about that, but that is not the scenario here. The plane does actually get to LA, and it's a direct flight. Well, once again, the same things can happen. Do I actually get an Uber or taxi there to take me to her place? Does something happen along those lines? Did the driver need to pull over somewhere and something happened? Was there some sort of carjacking or whatever? And even when I get to her place, even though I think she lives in a decent part of town, is it that I got out there and I got mugged or something? So once again, there's a lot that goes into this. A lot of different ways this disappearance could happen. A lot of scenarios that could happen going 3,000 miles, even when you're flying. So I don't show up there on the evening of August 1st. Michelle is working that day. She's expecting me to be at her place when she comes back. Once again, of course, Michelle, of course, needs to be considered a suspect, but we'll just keep this simple for now. She gets back. I'm not there. And is this suspicious? You're supposed to go see an ex, and then the ex says, well, he didn't show up. And we have had scenarios in Unfound's history of cases, 360 now, where exes or even current partners who are believed to have caused the disappearances actually file the missing persons report as well. We should never think that a person who is a suspect or actually caused the disappearance never files the report. Of course, they don't want the police to get involved. They want to put it off for as long as possible. But I can tell you for sure that there have been scenarios where they caused the disappearance and they filed the police report. So her filing the police report and doing that does not cause her to then be seen as somebody who didn't cause my disappearance. It's just an action that she's taken. So we look at it as her story is this. So she goes, Ed Dentzel was supposed to get to my place. He's not here. And here's her story. This is the story that she tells police when she files this report. She says she was working all day, and that's the reason she didn't go pick me up at the airport, or I didn't get a ride to wherever she was working, because she's working that day. I just went to her place. She left the key under the mat or something, or some code that I could get in there, make myself at home until she comes home. So she was working that day. And the idea was that I was supposed to be taking a ride share or Uber Lyft to her place, which my guess would be about a 20-minute drive, something like that. She doesn't hear from me, even though I was supposed to let her know when I landed. That didn't happen, or when I got to her place. She didn't, allegedly, I didn't text or call her. She gets home. I'm not there. She tries calling and texting me. No answer. She checks Facebook. And I made no posts that day. Didn't post any pictures about being at her place or, checking in or saying where I am. She tried checking with the airline, but the airline would not, of course, give out the information because she's not my wife. She's not a family member. She's just somebody contacting the airline. We know the airline's not going to do that. So she can't get any information that way for privacy reasons. And she even makes a post on Facebook asking if any of my Tampa friends, and I have many of them here, have seen me or talked to me, and none of them have. None of them said, in fact, they say, well, we didn't even know that he was going to California. So, we don't know what to tell you. None of them have driven me to the airport, can vouch that, yes, I got dropped off. Nothing like that. Everybody seems to be clueless. So the difficult part in all of this is that I'm an adult and I can do what I want. If I want to stand up an ex-girlfriend, I can do that. It's rude, but I can do that. And this is a huge complication. We're talking earlier, Dr. Telesco, frustrations with police. This is probably the number one biggest obstacle when the investigation of adult disappearances in adult disappearances. This whole idea that a person can walk off and what do you want us to do? They have their own free will. There's nothing illegal about somebody walking away and going off. They want to be homeless. They want to live in the woods. Want to commit suicide. There's nothing against the law. And as I've kind of joked around, probably the biggest thing that's going to get somebody in trouble for just leaving their life is if they have a job not paying their taxes. It won't really matter until April 15th. That's the way it can be. And I've really tried to stress that over the last 8.5 years. That yes, I understand, at least here in the United States, adults can do what they want to do as long as they're not breaking the law. We're nobody tracking us. This isn't North Korea or anything like that. But on the other hand, investigators need to be able to understand disappearances to the point of saying, you know what? Yes, there is a segment of the population that would walk out of their lives. It might have something to do with mental health. It might have something to do with drugs. Might have to do something that just happened in their life or something. Maybe it's a head injury. Certainly, there is a segment of the population where that can happen. But really, there is a vast part of the population where that is probably not going to happen. It's certainly conceivable, but I don't know how possible it is. And I would say, looking at myself, I'm not the person who is walking out of my life. I have a pretty good life. And like I said, though, I'm allowed to stand up my ex. Maybe I was just, playing head games with her. Yes, I said I was going to go out there and see her, and then I don't, and then kind of get a big kick out of it. Instead of me flying to LA, I actually flew to Las Vegas where I used to live, and actually I'm going to see friends out there, and I lied just to twist the knife on an ex. I would never do that to anyone, by the way. But it's a possibility, and we all know how we all sometimes feel about our ex partners, ex-husbands, ex-wives, etc. The next thing we have to look at regarding this particular disappearance is, and it's once again a huge problem with disappearances, is jurisdiction. Well, yes, she's in LA, but there's no proof, at least at this point, very, very early on, that I ever made it to the state of California. Maybe I disappeared here in Florida. And even then, it's not very clear cut which Florida department would even be in charge. Would it be the Clearwater Police? Because I have a Clearwater address. Clearwater Police. Is it Clearwater Police? Is it Largo Police, which is another jurisdiction very close to here? Is it the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office? The Pinellas County Sheriff's Office kind of covers everything that one of these towns doesn't. Would they be responsible? Well, to even add more of a complication, even just here in Florida, Tampa, the airport is in a different county. It's actually in Tampa. You have to go across one of the causeways to get over there. So would it be Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office? Would it be the Tampa, Florida city, Metro, Tampa Metro who would take the report? Or is this a responsibility of the Florida State Police? I mean, I just named like 7 different jurisdictions just here in Florida. So, and we don't even know where I am. This is how complicated it can get. But then if, we're to think, well, then we think about California. Same thing. Is this a California Highway Patrol problem? Is it California State Police problem? Is it LA Metro problem or some other town? Once again, you start talking about 3 or 4 different, at least, jurisdictions. I don't know the jurisdictions down there as well, but already I've named like over 10 different jurisdictions that maybe possibly might need to be the one where my report needs to be filed. Being it's found in California, that might not be the right jurisdiction. And here's what I know about disappearances. No jurisdiction wants disappearance cases. You don't know how many times over like the last 8.5 years where I've heard stories from families about how there was a competing, well, not, it's the opposite of competing, what I call the hot potato effect. And I'll give you an example. There's a guy who went missing. In fact, we might even talked about him on a prior show a few years ago, Eric Alvarado, who lived in Texas, near the border of Texas and Arkansas. And his car, he left his home in his vehicle with his dogs. And eventually his car was found over the border in Arkansas. So he's a Texas resident, but his car is found in Arkansas, but there's no proof that he actually drove his car to Arkansas. So we had a situation where Arkansas State Police are like, I don't want it. Well, we don't want it because he's a Texas resident and there's no proof he was here. It's your case, Texas. And Texas says, well, yeah, we know he's a resident, but his car was found over there. So that makes it more likely that he was over in Arkansas. It's your case. And so they fight about who isn't going to take the report and be responsible for it. They aren't clamoring. They aren't crawling over each other to get the report. In fact, it's much the opposite. They don't want to have anything to do with it at all. Very, very common. Because once again, I think they do this because down deep, they know that, man, this is going to be tough and we really don't know what to do, my opinion. So we have this jurisdiction problem. So because of this, all of you need to understand this investigation will probably not be as complete as the public would think. Because I'm an adult, because I'm traveling, because we have all these jurisdictional issues, it's not going to be, they're going to do something, we're going to get into that, but reality is they're probably not going to do as much as everybody thinks. It's going to come down to, of course, my father's 88. So regarding my family, maybe it might come to my brothers and my sister. Maybe some of my friends might take it on because that's where probably the deep looking into my disappearance is going to happen. It's probably not going to happen from the police, even though a report will be filed somewhere. Even in my own scenario that I created, I'm really not sure where the right place is. So probably what will go on at that point is the police, at least in LA, she'll be there. They will see, is Michelle telling the truth? Was she at work? Is there solid proof of this? They might take a look at her phone records. In fact, she might even give them up voluntarily, or maybe they'll have to file a subpoena or something to get to her phone records, text records. Did she actually really try to call and text me as she said? And also, of course, with Facebook, did she really write a post looking for me on Facebook? And probably, I will tell you, I know this is going to amaze a lot of you. If that all checks out and Michelle's story that she is telling checks out, of course, that doesn't necessarily mean that she didn't have something to do with my disappearance. But if the story she tells the police that checks out, that's probably where the investigation is going to end. I know, once again, my experience, You wouldn't think that given it's two airports, but we're going to get into what could be done. But probably they're not going to do anything here in Florida, checking Uber or Lyft. Did I actually get one of those? They might get my, credit card records to see, but the chances of them getting video from like the Tampa airport, of course, we know cameras are everywhere, somewhat unlikely. They might get the videos from the LAX if I'm landing in LAX or John Wayne or Bob Hope Airport, the three different airports, whatever one it is. But it very well could be that if they waste time, that if they go to check those cameras, maybe they've already disposed of them. Even though they're saving on a hard drive, they may record over it, after a while. Once again, just depends on how quickly police get on it. And usually in these particular types of disappearances, they are fairly slow. So things can be lost. So we move on. So important. This is the kind of disappearance, though, that could go in a few directions. And I remind all of you, what do I say in almost every one of these shows? Disappearances are about people, not about circumstances. So this then comes back to me. I'm supposed to go see her. I don't see her. I'm not there. So what is important to know about me? Well, I don't stand people up. I stick to my word. I don't have any mental health issues. I don't have any drug issues. I don't have any alcohol issues. I don't have any money issues. But on the other hand, I'm a fairly solitary guy. I live by myself. I spend a lot of time at home. So there could be a little bit of mystery of, where is Ed at certain times of the day? What is he doing and everything else? So I do fall in, every one of us, Dr. Telesco, anybody in the audience, Dr. Telesco's student assistants, we all fall into our own particular demographics of why any of us, the most likely reasons that we could go missing. Of course, if you're an addict, probably the number one reason you're going to go missing is because of drugs. If you have mental health issues and you struggle to take your medication or something like that, and probably mental health issues certainly is going to be the number one cause. Could it be murder? Could it be something else? It could be, but really in your demographic, probably your mental health is what's going to lead to your disappearance. If you're somebody out there who is in a violent relationship, then probably that's what's going to end up causing your disappearance. Now, for me, coming back to me again, it's a little harder to determine because I don't have any drug issues, mental health issues, suicidal ideations. I'm not in a relationship. But on the other hand, what is there about me? Well, I do this podcast and I've certainly ticked some people off over the years. And I wouldn't say I've gotten any death threats, but I've certainly had people be upset at some of the disappearances that have been covered. And certainly there have been some suspects or persons of interest who haven't liked being mentioned, even though I think we try to treat every one of these disappearances objectively. So we may say that maybe my number one possibility of going missing is because there's somebody out there who heard a podcast. Was that person waiting for me downstairs in my building? Did the person somehow know, maybe seeing that I said I was going to LA, was somebody waiting at the airport, to do something, maybe a group of people? Was somebody waiting in LA? So this would probably, once again, be something that's an idea. So once again, disappearances are about people. We have to look at the person and understand, well, what are the most likely ways that person would go missing? Being that we don't really have a lot of any facts regarding anything, where should we start looking? And you have to start looking at the person. So what are, though, the investigation possibilities? Now that I've set this all up, I'm going to an airport, supposed to be going to an airport. I'm flying to another airport, going to the second largest city in the United States, and then taking some sort of transportation to an ex's place. So investigation possibilities, we're just going to go starting in my place and then ending up in California. So investigation possibilities. Of course, most of this the police are not going to do. This is going to have to be up to if my brothers and my sister want to take it on, or some really, really good friends who have some, time on their hands, because I interview mostly family members and friends of missing people. And they're the ones who are mostly doing the work. And this is for disappearances that not are 40 years old, but even just a few years old. They're the ones who are doing stuff. The police, they may be doing stuff, but it'd be hard to show that. If they are, there's no facts to support that. So my place, is my car here? I said I was going to take Uber, but instead I drove. Is my car here or not? What does that mean? If my car is here, maybe did I really leave it all? Maybe they'll come up. They'll of course come and look in my place. Maybe the person, the rental official will just say, who has a key to this place, might let one of my family members in. They'll look around. Is there any signs of violence in here? Is my suitcase missing? Is my wallet here that I would take? Are my keys here? These types of things. So it starts here. Is my car here? Yes or no? Anything signs. So if my car is here, are there anything weird about my car? Or is it just like parked there? You should know my complex has video, and maybe if they get to it fast enough, they can check the video. Does the video show me coming down the elevator, walking out, maybe going to my car, or going out to the front and waiting for an Uber to come by? What does the video show? That's something that would be checked. Did anybody see me here on the premises? So now we get to maybe the check. Next is the trip to the airport. They check my records, and did I pay for an Uber or not? Yes or no? If there's no Uber charges, well, that's certainly going to if my car is here and there's no Uber, Lyft, taxi charges on my credit card, well, then how exactly did I get to the airport? Did I get a ride from somebody, and did that person harm me? Now, why somebody who I would get to drive me to the airport would harm me, I don't know. But it's something that would certainly have something to be investigated. Video at the airport, got to get to it because those videos might go away pretty fast. Getting on the plane, this is very difficult. If the police don't do it, nobody else is going to be able to do it. If they can get video, am I at the gate? Did I get on the plane? Because you're not going to be able to get those records, just your average person. If I drove to the airport, is my car there in like short-term or long-term parking? Can it be found? Say it shows I left here and go to the airport. What if they can't find my car on the premises at all, anywhere? So if I'm not seen here, if then this is a Florida disappearance. If they can't prove that I got on the plane, of course, this is a Florida disappearance. If there's signs of foul play in my place, there's signs of foul play at the car. If there's no proof that I ever got on the jet, any plane going anywhere, this is a Florida disappearance. And the report that Michelle filed out there might get transferred to Florida. But like I said, we have jurisdictional issues. Still could be jurisdictional issues. So now we get to the other side of this. Once again, unless, of course, the plane goes missing like Flight 370 did. Let's say all of that checks out. Yep, I went over there, no problems. Went to the gate, sat there, had my headphones on, listened to music, whatever. And definitely I got on the plane. So this then becomes a California disappearance. Same kind of things. Does it show me, if you can get the video, is it me, of course, getting off the plane? But do I go up? Do I get an Uber? Does some private person pick me up? Maybe Michelle's lying. She said she was at work and didn't pick me up, but what if she appears on the video, pick me up? Well, that would be very, very suspicious. That she told the police one thing, but the video shows something different. I mean, then it's very clear what could have happened down here. And if they show that Uber picked me up, can this driver be located? Could I have gotten in a car that was a fake Uber or Lyft ride? This is happening all the time. Did somehow I get tricked? It seems unlikely that I would get tricked, but. So we now move to, they track down the Uber driver, and checks out. He has a pretty good rating. Has been working for Uber or Lyft for a few years. Has high ratings, no problems with them. And he says, yeah, I picked the guy up, the long-haired guy up, drove over. He gave me the address. He got out, he gave me a tip. We had a nice conversation on the way over here. I dropped him off. That was the last that I saw him. Now, it's interesting. We had a disappearance in LA just like this regarding the disappearance of Bo Man, who took an Uber from a certain location to an address. And he got out of the car and he went missing. His remains were eventually found about a quarter mile away. And it seems that he died due to a drug overdose. But there's still some big time questions there that I don't know, they'll ever get answered. But so this does happen. People get dropped off with Ubers and then go missing. So let's say this checks out and there's no reason to believe that this guy, and it shows like his own records for Uber, that yeah, after he dropped me off, like 5 minutes later, he was picking somebody else up in the Studio City area of LA. Well, that would be really hard to make, if there was foul play, it really make hard to make that all happen and then, go 5 minutes later to pick somebody else up. Certainly would lead to believing this person. Once again, would the police do this? I don't know. But I know enough, like regarding Bo Man's disappearance in LA and Uber, that his friends and family certainly were able to get a lot of information that the police did not get. So I would say if somebody in my life wants to put in the work in LA to figure this out, I think it could be done. Of course, what else could be done? Records. The problem is my phone records, my pings. I'm in LA. Did the police get those records? Kind of unpredictable. It is certainly not a given that this would be done. It would be nice. But the tough part is, as I've learned, is police will get those records and then never tell the families what the records say. Luckily, some families manage to get creative and get the records on their own, but phone records are one of those things that's a wide range. We have a lot of families that have nothing. They don't even know if the police have gotten the records. And then I've had many guests who have all of the records. I mean, some of the most complete phone records I've ever seen with ping information, everything else, and everything in between. For my disappearance, that's why for my disappearance, kind of hard to make a prediction here on whether they would be able to get my records from T-Mobile. I'm on my own account, and they just don't dish those that information out to anybody. So we can't take for granted that the phones and the ping information is going to be public. You may try to get them. That doesn't mean you're going to get them. So moving on. So now it seems, as best as anybody can tell, it's circumstantial though still, that I really did make it to LA, and I really did get dropped off at Michelle's. And from where I got dropped off to going inside her building up to her particular condo, is like a 1 minute, 2 minute trip. And somewhere in there, I went missing. Was I hungry? Did I don't know if Michelle has any food in her house. Did I go down the street? And so maybe somebody might try to, if they do it quick enough, try to find any video cameras, convenience store cameras, or things like, anything like that. Doorbell cameras, of course, have become quite common. And my experience is that those people are more than happy to help out people, if they've recorded anything that might be helpful. We've had a couple disappearances where those have played a role. And so they're going to check those. And let's just keep narrowing it down even more and more. What if none of those cameras show anything? And let's say, and this is quite common too, we'll go to the next step. Well, what about cameras in Michelle's building? I live in a condo building. Cameras here work. In fact, I've actually been in the security building down front, and I've actually looked at the cameras, and I've talked to the security guard and everything. It's been a while. Her building probably has something similar with cameras on the premises. premises, even for just insurance reasons. And, it's recording. And let's say somebody, a friend of mine, a family member, goes to Michelle's building and somehow talks to the property manager and tells him, hey, there's this guy who went missing. He's supposed to be showing up at the building. Do you have any records? And say, well, we can check the records. And let's just say that the records show that, yes, I did get there. And yes, I did go into her building. But that's where because rarely do they have cameras up on floors. There's no cameras on my floor in this building. So let's say there's no camera on her floor. All it shows is, yes, I went in and seemingly I didn't come back out. The problem, though, is that not every exit has cameras on it. So I could have exited the building and no camera would have seen me leaving. And so then we're left with, did Michelle cause my disappearance? Or it could be that, did I show up there at her place and there was some guy there who didn't know I was going to be there? Maybe she said, that maybe she I have no idea. But she does have some man in her life that, oh, you're showing up to see Michelle and this guy's jealous. Do we get into a fight? I don't know. Of course, it's my story, but I'd like to think that I would win that fight, but maybe not. And then did he just, somehow get me out of the building, my body out of the building without being seen? And maybe Michelle, it's on her premises, it's in her condo, but she has nothing to do with it. And maybe she talks to that guy in her life or some guy, and he goes, "No, I've been here. He never showed up, and my stuff's not there or anything." And so that's when it gets very, very complicated. But this is a good example of how a disappearance can go. This is the anatomy of a disappearance, bringing in all of the different elements of travel, of relationships, of video, of checking phone, credit card records, everything all combined into this one particular scenario. And of course, I think I did a scenario a couple times ago where I was driving to Pennsylvania, and that's kind of a trip too. Of course, the big difference is nobody really thinks that I made it to Pennsylvania to my dad's place, and he covered up my disappearance. But this adds that one more layer of complexity where you could at least conceive that I really did get to my destination, just looking to go up to Michelle's place and relax until she comes back. But what do you know? Maybe she has some stalker that she doesn't know about who's waiting for her, sees me go in her place, and is thinking, what the heck? Some guy who is like completely lost his mind or whatever else. And he gets jealous. Oh, she has some other guy. What's going on here? And surprises me somehow. Nothing to rule that out. So that is my disappearance going to see my ex. So the question is, did my ex Michelle really cause my disappearance or not? So there you go, Dr. T.
Wow. Wow. I got to tell you, that's a lot. So it looks like we've got about 30 attendees, and I'm
Wow,
wondering
fantastic.
if that is a lot. That is a lot tonight. Actually, it's 34 with all of us,
Yeah.
but I'm seeing one question in the chat, and I'm not sure who's going to be running that tonight. Could someone please tell me?
Yeah, if you have questions out there about anything that I described here, I'd love to answer your questions. We got a little time here. I love to ask questions or answer questions. In fact, when I've spoken at schools, that might be my favorite part when I get the questions.
Yeah. And it
And
looks like it actually, so we have 10 who are live with us right now on YouTube and 34 on the webinar.
wow,
So like that's really pretty cool, Ed. I think that I think you win. You win.
thanks. I like to win.
I know you do. That's why I'm telling you.
See my posts
Uh,
about trivia and everything else. I
yes,
like
that's
to
right.
win.
That's right. So it's 40, there's 44 people watching tonight, and that is definitely, we're setting a record, I think. And I know that the dean is going
Right?
to be really, really happy to hear it. I know Dr. Kushner really loves watching your stuff. So tell me, Annie, it looks like you're perched, ready to go. And I'm going to share your video here and spotlight you and go for it. Tell us what are you coming up with as questions?
Okay, so we have two from the audience actually, and while you were kind of talking about that, another one came in, so it was one number two,
Right.
at least for the Zoom. So Tia Scott asks, during the standard 24 hours you're waiting to report, should you still be looking for the individual or wait for the police?
First of all, there is no time limit. 24 hours, that is something that my opinion, you should know, I've never been a police officer, but here's my interpretation of that. That is something that certain police departments, not everyone, have created because their experience tells them that most people show back up. Now they could be deceased. Most disappearances get resolved within 24 hours. Statistically, that's true. But nobody should ever think that there is some law out there that says you have to wait 24 hours. Really, it's just some officer or investigator, whoever who's on the job at that particular time. It just doesn't want to take the report because the person is thinking, I'm not going to fill out the report and file it and have to type it up or whatever they have to do. And then this gets resolved even before I'm done doing the paperwork.
I'm going to jump in for a second, Ed. I just want to, broad brush strokes are always difficult,
Yeah, they
right? So, yeah. So let's just, I can only speak about NYPD. I can't speak about anything else. As far as like, Florida, Davie Police. We have friends, we partner with the Davie Police Department, and we can certainly ask them. But I know for a fact in the NYPD that this was a procedure. So it's not like an individual discretionary decision that's being made by a police officer, as you just mentioned. That may be true for some police officers somewhere. I don't know. But I do know that the patrol guide, the procedures of the NYPD, for example, largest police department in the country, not because I went there, not because I worked there, not because I'm being arrogant about this whole thing. I'm not. I'm just saying that I'm very familiar, having taught at the police academy, know the patrol guide very well, that it's a procedure that says 24 hours. And some police departments is 48.
Bad
24,
idea.
48. Now that's with us, it was 24. And so there's valuable information that can be lost if you're waiting 24 hours. And so that's the downside to it. But I think that you're right. I think the procedure is there because they want to try to alleviate wasted time.
Mm-hmm.
But that being said, I just want to make sure that our viewers, our students, anybody who's watching understands that it's for the big police departments. It's not like discretionary, like a police officer just can blow off a complainant and say you got to wait.
The issue could be though that, of course, I've covered disappearances in New York City, as you all know, and LA. Most of the disappearances though that are featured on Unfound are small town. We got
Small town. Okay. Yeah.
That's
Right.
most of the time. Not everybody's
Yeah.
doing anything in the cities.
That's right.
And, so there's a wide range of what can happen, certainly.
I gotcha.
I think the most important part that needs to be taken away from the question is you don't have to wait 24 hours. All right. There is no necessarily waiting time for the individual. You have free will. This is the United States. If you want to go try to file a missing persons report somewhere, do it. All right. Of course, make sure it's an actual missing person. You're not just wasting police time. But
right, of
you
course,
don't have to wait 24 hours. It may be a procedure or whatever else.
yes.
But there's nothing saying that you have to wait.
True.
And if that means that you have to go down to the police department and they say, well, we can't do it 24 hours, then you sit there and wait there until the 24 hours up, and then you really have to push it.
Well, that's like in anything. And even, I don't know why maybe tonight I'm feeling a little maybe overprotective of the police. I don't know why I am. It's because it's the season of law enforcement. We're trying to, highlight. And and be loving and kind toward police. But anyway, I'm just kidding.
So, but
I'm
if
teasing
I
you.
want to just take the question on its face, yes, you should all do something. I mean,
Yes.
yes, do,
Yes.
if you're gonna,
Yes.
if the question is, yes, don't sit around,
Yes,
start
for
taking
sure. But
action.
I'm just kind of reacting to, I don't want people to walk away thinking that it's really discretionary. And of course, these small little police departments in, rural America, some of them are still in the Yellowstone 1923 series or whatever, but that's fine. It's not good police business to be doing that kind of thing, discretionary, um, you know,
Yeah, and I
discretionary
with
sort of
you.
blowing people off, not with domestic violence, not with missing persons, not with, really anything, right? That's not what we want. That's not the gold standard of
It
policing,
certainly isn't, but it happened.
just like the gold standard of medicine. Okay. So if anybody has ever been involved in medicine in the United States, and you have a family member who's in a hospital, if you're not the squeaky wheel, you're not getting the grease. And
That's
it's
right.
the same thing what you're saying. Go
Yep.
ahead, Annie. I'm sorry. I got off on a tangent.
And it should be also that needs to be figured in here is that when it comes to NYPD, NYPD is one of the few departments in the United States that actually has a missing persons bureau and unit.
That's right.
Most departments in the country do not, even some fairly large departments do not. So that's probably something that we also need to consider with Dr. Telesco's talking about as well.
Thank you. Go ahead, Annie.
So we actually had a good couple more come in for the Zoom. I'm sure there's also some on the YouTube, so we'll get to that after we finish with these. But kind of continuing on with this path, we actually had Stephen come in. I'm sorry if you are an officer and have an official title. It is not in your Zoom name, so I'm just gonna say Stephen. And they said at the Broward Sheriff's Office, there is no time. We're required to take the report and enter them into FCIC within 2 hours. So I thought that was cool. Like somebody went in and added that to the chat. So thank you for your input.
Thanks.
And then we also had Christopher asked, how can law enforcement agencies strengthen internal advocacy efforts to prioritize missing persons cases and improve response urgency?
Education. As I've brought up, of course, Dr. Telesco knows I've talked about this many times. In fact, I've been on the Nova Southeastern campus talking about this. Is about education. After 8.5 years, 360 disappearances, I'm not sure the average officer on the beat understands disappearances enough. I think that on the beat officers, the person who's actually going to pull up and fill out the report when it comes to domestic violence and a lot of other issues we have here in the United States, as far as conflict resolution and all that stuff, and, protecting a crime scene and everything. Fantastic. Even though I know problems still happen, and I know that domestic violence, for example, it's like one of the most dangerous calls that officers can get. But when it comes to disappearances, my impression, it's a little too, all right, well, we're going to, fill out this report, kind of just what we talked about, kind of with the thinking, well, my experience tells me that most people are going to show up alive or deceased within 24 hours. And that's statistically true. But what about the people who don't? We're here to solve problems. We're not here to watch problems resolve themselves. And so just a little more intuitiveness, insightfulness, and the way I talk about it is knowing it when you see it or when you hear it. When you show up and some family member saying, I haven't seen my daughter, heard from my daughter in 3 days. The wheels need to start turning, and you need to know that ask the particularly insightful questions to really start narrowing things down. And my impression is that right now it's just people showing up and filling out paperwork. And every second counts. So I think it's education because they're not going to get the experience necessarily. You have to wait until the disappearances happen, and then you need to be an expert. So you have to become that expert before it happens.
Thank
That's
you.
okay.
So as we're going, more and more questions are coming in. So I'm going to take a couple more and then we can move to the YouTube. Next, somebody asked, well, this is the same person, so I'm going to kind of put them together. So we had someone say, how do you determine whether a case is a voluntary disappearance or foul play? And what role do you believe social media plays in finding a missing person?
First part is we have to look at the person. You know, the difference between the walk off or foul play. You have to really know. That's what I said. It's about you have to. Disappearances are about people, not circumstances. We talk about circumstances, you know, going to LA and flying and all this stuff, but really, even with my particular own scenario, it really comes down to what kind of person is Ed Dentzel. Would he really walk out of his life? Probably not. Whereas somebody else might be much more likely. So you really have to get to know the person. And for investigators, you have to try to get to know that person as well as you can, as quickly as you can. And if you start hearing things about drugs and you start hearing things about mental illness and you start hearing things about, well, they were talking crazy and all this stuff, then obviously that is something that's going to lend itself to, well, this person really did walk off. That doesn't mean the person knew exactly what he or she was doing. Might have been totally delusional. So that has to be considered. But then when it's foul play, well, then we have to start hearing, well, did this person have any problems in his or her life? Was it getting threatened? Are they in a relationship? Was there, you know, did they have problems at home? You have to get to know the person, and then that's how you start to determine the best course of action. Because the actual facts on the ground aren't going to tell you anything usually.
Okay, thank you.
And
And
then the second part of it, I forget
it
what.
was how do you or what role do you believe social media plays in finding a missing person, if
Very
any?
important role, very important. You got to start posting, you know, and when you post, don't make it like a long paragraph because that's just going to wear people out. You need to get the precise information. This person was last seen at a specific date, specific time, specific location. You document also who this person was last seen by, and you also, you know, this person was, the person had plans to go here, the person's car is missing, the person's dog is missing, all of those things. And of course, if you also have to unfortunately include if this person was having mental illness problems, things that should also be posted as well. But you have to be as precise as possible, but as few words as possible because our attention spans suck these days.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to give you, there's two questions, but I'm going to give you this last question from here because we still have some on the YouTube.
Okay.
And then we're going to move over to the YouTube with Eddie. So Jennifer asked, what is your employment background and how did you become involved with this type of
My employment background has nothing to do with this. Really, it's been 8.5 years of devoting my work time to nothing but interviewing people, talking to people who have experienced disappearances, people who have had their lives, dare I say, ruined by disappearances and listening to them, documenting what they say. I have all of the notes that I've ever taken from any person I've spoken to over the last 8.5 years. And I try to do thorough interviews. I let the people pretty much, for the most part, say whatever they want to say in the interviews, ruling out, of course, anything like defamation, anything like that. Um, and this is just something that I don't know if I planned it, but I've just become to the point where I certainly know a lot about this particular topic. And I think the podcast and the things that I've been able to do speak for themselves. But there is no way to on the job to learn about all of this because the average police officer isn't going to experience enough disappearances to become an expert on the job. That's why we need education. And, and of course, most families don't have anybody going missing. So this is something that you have to go out and find. You have to go get the information because it's not going to come to you.
Thank you. So we do have one more for the Zoom, but we're gonna jump to the YouTube to make sure that there's time to let that audience ask their questions, and if there's time, we can come back.
Mhm.
Okay, so first on the YouTube from Ashley Martinez, she asked, "What led you to pursue this job?" It's really interesting.
Always been interested in disappearances. I'm old, and I can
You're
remember
not
being.
old. Stop. You're not old. I'm old.
I'm feeling
You're
pretty
not
old
old.
these days, Dr. T.
Are you?
Just something that I've always been interested in. I've always been fascinated with disappearances going back to, a kid like the Titanic, which went missing, was actually missing for a long time before it was found in the 1980s. And Flight 19 and things like that, always been fascinated. Something about my mind and disappearance. I don't know. And then just
Great.
all the technology finally caught up with my interest with podcasting.
Great. Can we have one more good one?
Yep. All right. Lisa Bailey asked,
I know,
in
Lisa.
your in your story, did you go missing on your birthday? How could that affect the investigation, if at all? For example, maybe your phone is getting pinged a lot.
Yep, August 1st is my birthday. Lisa knows. And it could, certainly people would be texting me, calling me, and they certainly would be aware that, hey, Ed's not come up getting back to me. And saying thank you. And I haven't posted about my birthday on Facebook, which is very unlikely because on my birthday I like to be worshipped. And so yes, those are all certainly they're certainly important points, certainly, and that would certainly even raise the probably very a lot higher that something probably bad happened. Yes, absolutely.
All right. Well, we're right at that time. Thank you so much to Annie and Eddie for everything that you have done tonight for us. We really appreciate you. Um, and Ed, I appreciate you. And thank you so much. It's really wonderful. I think we did break a record. I texted the dean and said I think we broke a record tonight
Yeah,
because it's like really good turnout, and I really appreciate
that's
it.
pretty good because it's of course it's 8 o'clock now here. It's 5 in the West. And that I do think I'm not telling you how to change at all, but it's pretty good at this time of day, especially with half the United States maybe still being at work and everything, to get this number. That's pretty good. Good.
Yeah, yeah, good stuff. Um, I do want to say that if you can hear my voice and you have not subscribed yet to the Fisher College of Education School of Criminal Justice YouTube channel, that I would really ask you to do that for us. We did pass 1,000 subscribers, which I know in the viral environment that we have, that 1,000 is like not a lot. But it's a lot to us because we started with 30. So that's really great. And I want to say thank you to you, Ed, personally, because I know that your followers on Unfound who love watching you on our channel. I think that a lot of subscribers came from you guys. So I just want to say that out loud. It's not lost on me that
Very
that's
welcome.
true.
You should know. I'm not telling this just because I'm on your show tonight. You are one of my honest favorite people. As far as people that I talk to, I deal like guests and everybody. You are my audience is one of their favorite people. Sir,
Aw,
absolutely,
aw. Well, that's
absolutely.
great. There's a lot of love going on here,
Yes,
and
feeling it.
that's why Ed, even though it was like law enforcement series, really pushed to make sure that we have you at least. I think it's 3 times, right, this season
Well, we didn't do one in January. I had something going on. Well, I'll be back in April.
in April.
And
Okay,
we need to
great.
get
Well,
together on what we're going to talk about. I don't think we've.
we haven't talked about that yet, but we will. And so next Thursday, we have a very interesting. It's going to be, isn't it Thomas Roberts? Eddie and Annie, please help me, remind me. I think it's Thomas Roberts, isn't it? Next week, protecting the homeland,
I'm confirming it right now, and yes, it is.
because
Protecting
that's
the
going to
homeland.
be. Thank you. That's it's going to be really interesting. We're gonna ask some tough questions about protecting the homeland, and that'll be a really, really good show. Please, please, please make sure that if you're one of Ed's followers, that please feel free. Next Thursday, same bat channel kind of thing. We'll be here talking about protecting the homeland, and we'd love to have you. So we'll see you next week.
Okay.
Thanks again. Thank you. Thank you. Thank
be
you.
here.
Great, great show. And we'll see you.